Hey guys, how's it going? Looks like we've made it to discussion two of our finance and budgeting class. Hope you all are enjoying your week and thankful it's Friday tomorrow. All right, so Sherilyn Hopkins, also known as Dean Hopkins, has proposed the question or challenged us to examine the budget of the unit or institution for which we work for and share with y'all about the organization and model of the unit or institutional budget. A little bit of a challenge. I tried accessing the institutional budget and it kept giving me an error every time I tried to view it. I also don't have access to the budget as far as it goes for housing and residence life. I will speak on it as best as I can. I will use a combination of the budget that I managed, this very small budget that I managed for for the RAs and for programming, and I will try to kind of relate it to the overall budget that we have in housing and residence life, because that's honestly it's the best I can do with the question posed. I wish the budget was working for the institution for Valdosta. I've tried a couple of times and apparently, it's a dead link for every single one I click on. Uh, so, uh, so basically, a little bit of breakdown of housing and residence life's budget is, from the way I understand it, uh, we're auxiliary. We're an auxiliary service. So what that means is none of the revenue gained from tuition and or fees at the university contributes towards our budget for operating budget for the year. We have various different accounts. We have an account dedicated specifically for office supplies. We have an account specifically dedicated towards programming, towards facility maintenance, depending on what it is, mostly furniture. We have endowments, etc. So, like I said, we operate on an auxiliary budget, and I couldn't tell you what that price is or what that value is. However, I can tell you that our operating budget is solely based off of our occupancy level, and so each time we don't make occupancy, we're extremely restricted in what we can and cannot purchase and what we can do. For example, this year we went through a purchasing freeze. I want to say twice. Once come around November, and then the second one around April. So that's just a little bit of insight on how dedicated and reliant we are upon our students to live in the halls. So yes, we talked about various different budgets in Chapter 3 for Barr and McClellan. And so yeah, that's like I said, that's where we have getting the auxiliary budgets. We also from what I understand, operate on a hybrid model where we do have a operating model or operating budget for the year, what we can spend for the year, which is further broken down by where the money is allocated for where it can be spent. And then I know we also we do have a capital budget. So the capital budget, as Barr McClellan had stated, is a multi-year project fund. So currently, Valdosta State's Housing and Residence Life is remodeling some of the buildings, painting it, upgrading it. So that money has been built into a 5-year, 10-year capital budget. So, for example, they put up a new awning over the back of Lowndes Hall's porch, which cost, I don't know, around $5,000 to $10,000 to do. But that money was garnished and taken from an endowment fund, which was specifically dedicated to a capital budget that is meant to be for long-term projects and long-term purchases. I know they're currently repainting the lobby of Lowndes Hall, or hopefully they are. They were supposed to. And I know that also comes in from the capital budget specifically set aside for projects. Another good example of what a capital budget is working with here, for at least for Housing and Residence Life, is specifically furniture. Furniture has a timetable in which they expire. The best one you could think of is a mattress for housing. So say the lifespan of that mattress is 10 years, so you have to budget for 10 years in advance to have that money ready to go to purchase the new beds and the new mattresses. This is all part of the capital budget. There's a lot of prior planning and a lot of forethought that goes into it. I know Ryan, who is the Associate Director of Housing, I know I've talked to him a little bit about this, the budget and how it works. Now I have terms to put towards it, so that's great. But he had explained to me that, say, this year hit the capital, like this year they're out of the capital budget. It was allocated to have like $20,000 to fix things and remove things. Whereas in about 2 more years, I know the timetables coming up for those mattresses. We'll see if they change them. That's when they have allocated towards them for about, I want to say they have about $100,000 for that year to operate on. Again, I'm ballparking. I don't know specifics. I'm just trying to pull from what I have experienced while working there, and the conversations that I've had about these budgets. There are also, we do have special fund budgets. Most obviously, or most apparent to me, is for when we do RA training and hall director training come August and July. These special funds are allocated towards a retreat trip, and so that's where we get that kind of money from. And also, I do believe that our money for professional development does not come from from student affairs. I believe that comes from specifically the department we work for. If you have it, I don't know if everyone here has it, but I know that is dedicated. Special funds are set aside into a pool of money for everybody to use up to a certain amount that's divided up and to be decided each year. And I know that Dr. Hardy and Gwendolyn Louise Nathan, that's her name, works on that and works on the budget. So that's an example of a special funds budget. So like I said, we are a hybrid model. We do use a lot of that. Now, as far as what I'm exposed to is a very minute budget that is decided in the beginning of the year based on the size of your hall and the number of residents. So the way that kind of works, from what I understand, is that, so say I'm in Lowndes, who has a 200 potential occupancy, and you got Patterson, who's like 260, 300, something like that occupancy. So I'll get like $1,500-$1,600 for the year, whereas Patterson will get like closer to $2,000, and Georgia even more because they have like 500 occupancy, so they get like $5,000 or something like that. These are also rough estimates on the money. I know my budget this year was close to $1,350 for the entire year. Now, not a lot. That's very little compared to what I'm used to as an RA. I managed $1,000 budget for a single program, so this was kind of it's a different challenge in a different way. Having to manage a budget that's that small can be equally as challenging as operating a budget that's very large. And while I have not operated a budget that's extremely large, and I am hypothetically stating this, please feel free to challenge me, but you have to make $1,300 stretch very far for a year, and $1,300 for a year is not that much. So the kind of way that I do it is, the way the programming budget works is what I was getting at, is that, yes, we all get divided up budgets. It's one so like when the students pay their housing fees and whatnot, it gets piled into the programming account that's specifically designated for that. And then the pools get divvied up to each hall based on the size and ratio of student interaction. So from there, I get it and I manage it. And that may be changing. That might be the ACs this year. Who knows? Whatever. The point being, from that point on, I have it, and then I have to decide based on programming what amount of money makes sense per each program, and that usually breaks down to like, is it a diversity program? Is it blah 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 blah? So I have to be very selective, and that kind of comes into talking about the zero. I think it's called the zero budgeting or zero balance budgeting. Um, Zero-based budgeting. Thank you. There we go. It's kind of similar to that in that I have to justify each purchasing that is made under the budget that I have. Everything that my RAs want to purchase, I have to challenge and try to decrease and try to rationalize. Okay, does $100 make sense for a program that's only going to hit about 20 students? So working off of a lot of restrictions like that and being very sure to make sure that money is being spent specifically towards the students in a very useful way that doesn't abuse their money. So limiting the amount of food that we're providing students and just feeding students, which is ridiculous. Um, Things like that. So I take the budget and I have to justify, and I do justify and make the RAs justify why they think that much money is necessary, and oftentimes I have to challenge that and knock it down a little bit. Um, and then there's some times that we save and pre-budget for a large program. So, for example, Southside Week, that's a very major program. I want to say that total we spent $1,500, maybe more, maybe a little bit more. And the way we did that is we took a few $100s from each hall, so there's 3 halls, and budgeted aside specifically for that program. And then further, we got RHA to join their budget with us, which is thankfully something we can do. Now, to further explain it, I can choose to give each RA a floor budget, and this past year I did not choose to do that, just because there were some RAs who don't spend the money, and there are others who do spend quite a bit of money and make sure they do it the right way. Uh, Interesting debate, interesting thought. I am contemplating actually giving them the specific budget per each RA this coming fall and seeing if that changes the strategic programming that is being implemented in the hall. So, interesting thought about how budgeting affects program quality and program intentionality. So, I think that in general and on large scale and small scale, restricting a budget can lead to more intentionality, while it could also hurt the creativity. So it's a double-edged sword, but in the same route, programming extensively can also hurt a budget. So it's got to be very intentional, and as one of my supervisors would say, we have to be good stewards of our students' money and making sure that we're spending it wisely. Um, so I don't know if this exactly hits on what we're asked to do. I hope it does, but without access to the actual trend, like actual physical numbers to look at to explain and break down, I'm kind of limited to what I have. I could talk. I mean, further how I track my budget. I use Excel. I use formulas to make sure that everything's auto updated. I take whatever balances that are seen on the receipts and subtract them immediately from the budget. And I know this is double checked by my supervisor as well, who has the actual numbers. I just have a rough estimate most of the time. But yeah, so that's it. That's basically how I do it. I mean, a combination of Google Docs, just that way so that the RAs can see it, and Excel, so that way I can keep track of it for myself. I do a lot of color coding to make sure I know what color. So I use red to represent a negative balance to subtraction, and I use green for a positive balance for whatever reason. Sometimes we have returns and we have to calculate the incoming back money. So, and I also use like orange to highlight when we're coming into an area where it might be like we're running low on budget, so it reminds me to restrict the budget a little bit. So that's really all I've got. I hope this was useful and beneficial to understanding how a little bit of housing budget works. I mean, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me, and I'll do my best to answer it as well as I can with the knowledge I have. All right, guys. Y'all have a nice evening and a nice weekend. Enjoy.